heart opening is is definitely connected with the access to the divine. I can access that deep source of wisdom that is beyond space and the limits of space and time, and use that to navigate life. And in many instances, it navigates, it's just telling me what to do. There seems to be a close correlation for that, uh, for me, with all the work that I've done on the heart. Whereas the more open that becomes, the clearer that connection, the more stabilized, the stronger, the more present it is. Yeah, and just the more love I feel, just the more of the good, the more bliss, the more feeling great for no reason.
And if somebody is listening now and thinking, oh, I want the same, I want my heart to be open, I want to live from my heart, but I'm trapped in the mind. It's all these stories and everything's going on there. I can't. What would you say? What would be your advice? Hello, Scott.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for answering my call. And today I'm speaking to Scott Britton. And you probably know Scott from podcasts, from his interview with Angela DeLula, from his YouTube channel, or maybe not. So here we are. So pleased to introduce Scott, and maybe you can say a few words about yourself. Like,
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Most of my life has been uh, in the world of kind of the traditional success script, going to the right schools, getting the right jobs, becoming an entrepreneur. And probably about 6 years ago, my consciousness journey really became front and center in my life. And it just became the most interesting, fascinating exploration process that I could ever imagine. And so, yeah, I've been on this journey, and now I feel really called to bring a lot of the wisdom and learnings and ideas to the places that I have been in my life, whether that's entrepreneurship, business, yeah, athletics, which was a big part of my, first 20 years of my life. So, yeah, it's really amazing to kind of see how a lot of those experiences kind of positioned me to help others that are going through things that I went through.
hmm, oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
And this podcast is called Awakening Now. And I ask everyone at the beginning, this word awakening, because it may have different meanings for different people. How would you define what is awakening?
Well, I think it's always a uh, continuously changing as your awareness and realization evolves. But for me, the first time that that word really resonated was understanding that I wasn't just my thoughts and my body and emotions. Kind of the separation from, what what I always thought I was, which was just a bunch of thoughts walking around in a body. And
How
so
funny to
starting
think
to
that
see
now,
that
isn't it?
clearly. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, life feels incredibly different than it did in that experience.
And can you say a little bit about how that happened to you? What happened? How was that? How did that shift occur?
Yeah, I I had been meditating, um using Headspace for probably about 6 years. And I had and meditation was always this type of like, I need to be less stressed. type of activity. And so I would meditate to be less stressed for my job and for all the things I was doing. And I I basically one day I was reading, I think I was maybe listening to Sam Harris or reading the what was it? The teachings of mastering the core teachings of the Buddha. And something just clicked where I realized I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not my thoughts, but I'm watching them. I'm aware of them. And that just, yeah, there was just, it was just a kind of like, oh, like a sudden like understanding of that. I don't think it was like anything particularly monumental, but and then of course there were many moments where I would just get pulled back into identification with thoughts, and it's still something that happens to me. Um, but yeah, there was a distinct kind of like knowing just like walking around in my house. And I don't know if it was before or after that. I also had a psychedelic experience around that time, my first one. And that was the first time that I feel like encountered, yeah, just a deeper presence that I would now call my true self, where I was just receiving information that was just so profoundly different from my typical waking consciousness. And I started to realize that this experience that I'm in right now wasn't all there was
Mm.
to me and my being.
I had the same experience when I first time tried magic mushrooms.
Nice.
I was like,
Yeah, it's pretty
well,
amazing.
what I thought reality was, wasn't it? And it was just, my mind was blown at that moment. I
Yeah.
thought I knew what reality was, and it's so hilarious now.
Yeah, I mean, they're incredibly powerful tools. And, for me, what that experience did was just create a fire inside of me to just go back to find a way to stabilize that some of those states so that my default waking state would be a connection to that presence, a connection to that wisdom and all the love that I briefly glimpsed and touched in those experiences. And that's a journey that I'm still on.
How sweet.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about all these psychedelic medicines. I like to call it medicines. I really don't like when people call it drugs because it's like putting a label on something that we don't know what it is just because we don't like it. And to diminish it or just get out of my way. And it's still a little bit of taboo, but it's opening up more and more. And I think there is so much value in exploring your own consciousness using all the different tools. Doesn't matter if they are technology tools or natural tools, it's just something that is available. So I'm not saying that everyone should go and try, but I'm not saying you shouldn't if you are pulled towards that. And I heard you have explored a little bit, or maybe a lot, of all these experiences. Would you like to share?
Sure. Um, yeah, I came to psychedelics because, I was running a business. I was doing like living in New York City, like a nice apartment, like all the things. And I just realized one day that I was just unhappy. And I'd been meditating for over 5 years. I had tried therapy, I'd tried many things, and something still was not changing. My experience was not changing. And I had resisted psychedelics like many people because of the word drug and because of the idea that they were bad and they were illegal and something super dangerous. but I had a number of a lot of entrepreneur friends who had done ayahuasca and said that it was a very transformative kind of uh, permanent shift in perspective. And that was interesting to me because a lot of people that when I think of drugs, I think of these kind of ephemeral hedonistic experiences.
Hmm.
I didn't think of um, something that could permanently shift the way that you think about reality. And so I guess I was in the right place at the right time because I was just kind of super looking for a shakeup in my life. And a friend had reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm organizing an ayahuasca ceremony outside of New York City where I was living. Do you want to participate?" And I was like, you know what do I have to lose? Like something has to change. And yeah, it was a 3 day ceremony and it was incredibly profound. It was the first time that I had a intensely somatic experience where I could feel energy in my body and I could feel my body just kind of moving and purging and um, something inside of me that I had never experienced before, where I felt like I was being moved instead of being the mover
Hmm.
in my body, if that makes sense. And I also feel like that was really the first time that, yeah, I connected with the divine. It was the first time I had a true spiritual experience. I had grown up in a religious household and went to church and all these things, but I never really touched something deeper. And it was in that first psychedelic experience that I felt like I did that, and it was amazing. And after that weekend, I was like, whoa, like psychedelics. Oh my God, like I want to learn everything. And so I read How to Change Your Mind and Chasing Fire and like all the you know, big psychedelic books at the time. And I went and I did another ayahuasca retreat 3 months later. And on that retreat, I had a Kundalini awakening. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with that, but that was a very the start of a very intense energetic process that I was definitely not prepared for.
Hmm.
Um, I just my vessel was not purified enough for that energy. And that really kind of just yeah, I think it created a spiritual emergency for me. And so I stopped using psychedelics after that for about 4 years because I was just too sensitive. I was shaking uh spontaneously all the time. I was having trouble sleeping. And so the last thing I wanted to do was take another psychedelic. Um, and I had been advised I eventually found a teacher and I'd been to many different teachers and eventually kind of figured out what was happening to me and that I needed to actually, um, I didn't need any more activating energy
Hmm.
practices or substances. And so, yes, since then, I've done psychedelics a handful of times. I've tried psilocybin. I've tried MDMA, but I see them as at least for me, like they will come into my experience when and if they are needed, and I don't really seek them out. I don't really I feel like I have plenty of opportunities for awareness and consciousness expansion that show up on my doorstep each day and that keep me quite busy. And so, um, I'm always open, but I'm not seeking.
That's great to notice because, if you need that experience, it will come and knock on your door and say,
That's right.
are you gonna come? Are
I
you
actually have
coming?
a I actually have a very funny story where, um, actually the last time I did ayahuasca, I had it was probably 2 years ago, little more than 2 years ago, and I had a shaman that had basically reached out to me that I had worked with, who was an amazing person. He was like an investment banker turned shaman. He like went to Peru and lived there for 6 years or something, and then came back to the U.S. And we had worked together. And he's like, "Hey, I want to start this new. I learned this new energy healing technique for basically kind of helping you get rid of really stubborn patterns. And I'm looking to work with entrepreneurs and like high performing people who want to just have like a more private experience, work with somebody through the course of the year. I'm kind of exhausted of holding space, these big space and these big retreats for people. And yeah, basically like he's like, I would love to like use you as a guinea pig for this, like, this new like energy healing technique. And I was like, yeah, dude, I would love to help you out. Like, why don't you come to Austin? Like, I'll host you. Um, and so he came to my house, and then he starts like setting up in the living room and putting like buckets and like all the stuff that you would have for an ayahuasca ceremony out. I'm like, hey, what's going on? Is this really that intense? And he's like, oh, we're doing this with ayahuasca. And he didn't tell me that. And so I was completely unaware. And I was like, wow, this literally showed up on my doorstep. I know that this is intended for me. Um, and yeah, that's the last time I did something like that. Literally showed up on my doorstep.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So it's a call from within or a call from the divine to meet that energy.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I definitely noticed like, yeah, for me, I'm acutely aware of I feel like over the years there's been an acuity developed of the information that enters my awareness. Is it coming from, patterns that are based on stuff that happened to me when I was a kid or whatever, or is it coming from a higher source of information? And I definitely have felt more recently that like, yeah, I'm getting these pings um about psychedelics again. So who knows? Who knows what'll happen? But yeah, paying attention to that is, and paying attention to the world around you too, which is just another way the divine communicates, is is something that I love.
And I want to notice that there are people who, let's call them spiritual tourists or chasing experiences, and they go and seek these medicines and they want more and more and more and more. And there is no time to integrate, there's no time to even sink into what happened, but there is always need for more. That's a different place. That's not what we're talking about, that it's calling you. This
Oh
is
yeah.
this is more like grasping onto something, trying to fix and getting addicted, even the experiences.
Yeah, it definitely seems like that's a real thing where it's like someone touches that ecstatic union and just wants to come back. And to me, I don't really think I had a choice. Like my own disposition with the Kundalini stuff and the energetic stuff and just how my body, what ended up transpiring, was like I never even like had that option. But from the very beginning, it was never interesting to me to be on that tourism loop where you go, you have a high, and then you go back to reality. And then you go and you have an incredible experience, you go back to reality, and back and forth and back and forth. I was much interested in figuring out how I could have like a steady, curve into the direction of stabilizing and the connection. Um, that was much more interesting to me.
Yes, because having a psychedelic experience does not equal awakening.
I
It
think that's
can,
fair.
it can trigger, great, but it doesn't equal. Otherwise, half of the people would be already awake, or at least half of those who tried any of it. But that is not equal.
Hmm. Are psychedelics part of your life right now?
Not right now. I live in a place where even a smoke is prison.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah, don't even talk about any other stuff. Well, I think they have drugs on this island, but it's drugs, not the medicines, not
That's the
that kind.
sacred stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but mushrooms or anything like it is just against the law and it's horrible. So it's a little bit close-minded here. There's a lot of alcohol now and cigarettes. That's
Hmm.
that's what people get. But it used to be. I had a fair share of magic mushrooms. I tried UFO, ayahuasca, peyote, uh, things like that. Yeah. And I met and talked with a lot of people who had experiences. So,
Nice.
so I'm not against it, but I would say that if anyone wants to go for it, they really need to find the right people, right medicine, right environment, right intention, right um, settling in, absorption. Kind of, it's a whole preparation experience and settling in, integration. Because if any of this is missing, it can mess you up.
Yeah, I think that people should take these serious substances seriously, which speaks to the preparation and intention and container and research and after the experience as well. I just talked to a guy, his name is Paul Austin. He runs a company and just like a website called Third Wave that's all about trying to basically change the culture around psychedelics and train people for integration and provide vetted resources. Um, and yeah, I think he told me that the brain, basically the plasticity post psychedelic experience is about 2 weeks. And so it's really important for those 2 weeks after to integrate the experience and to try to, integration is such a funny word, but for me it's trying to bring in the information that you experience into your normal existence. Whatever those type of new patterns or new ways of seeing or being are that you got from that experience, how can you kind of install that into your daily life?
Mm. Yeah, install. Like you got the download, now you need to install it. Right?
That's right. Just like software.
Cool. Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't install correctly, and people get to very dark places, so very depressive states, and don't know, and have nobody to talk to because nobody would understand.
Yeah, I think that's a real thing. And my hope is that as these substances become more popularized, that starts to shift and people have access to resources will be more accessible. And I know, and I'll just drop a one thing that I know is helpful for people if they find themselves in that place. There's a gentleman named Daniel Ingram who started this emergent phenomena research consortium. And so for people that are having essentially spiritual emergencies,
Oh,
uh, they can reach out and they will help you. They'll direct you to a resource.
oh wow. We're gonna
And
need to put the
honestly,
link below for
yeah,
people to contact.
yeah. It's honestly something I wish I knew about because when I was going through everything after my second psychedelic retreat with the Kundalini stuff, I really didn't know what was happening to me. I really thought I screwed myself up. And I went to all the Western doctors, and no one could tell me what was going on with me. Um, they told me that I was stressed. And we did like brain studies and all kinds of things, and we just don't have the, at least that maybe we do now, but 6 years ago we didn't have the technology to really look at this stuff and understand it.
Hmm. Yeah, very interesting. And now, how is all the installation working now?
Life is good, you know. I've been really focused on uh just continuing to open the heart. And so for me, I've been following this wisdom lineage called Ren Shui, and it's basically based on Taoism, Buddhism, and Chinese wisdom culture. It's led by a master, a Qigong master who basically had to leave China during the Communist Revolution. He lives in New Zealand now. And there's a lot to the system, including Qigong, but the main thing for me is to just notice when the heart is closed, um, and use that as a conduit to go into the consciousness and see what's causing that. And so usually it's lots of just things that happened to me as a child, things that happened to me as a kid that are basically creating these perceptual patterns that make me, you know, feel not safe or make me
Mhm.
feel reactive or any of these things instead of just resting as just a loving awareness. And so I feel like my entire life is like I have a very normal life. Like I'm busy, I'm podcasting, I'm a dad, I'm doing business stuff, I'm doing all these things, but I'm always just watching my own inner experience while I do all that and noticing when, yeah, there's just these patterns that come up and then going into them and essentially they just dissolve.
So you would say that you live more from the heart now rather than from the head.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, the heart opening is is definitely connected with um the access to the divine, where for me, I feel like I can drop in at any point and just almost have a psychedelic type of experience where I'm just connecting with that information that's from my true self. You know, I can access that deep source of wisdom that is beyond space and the limits of space and time and use that to navigate life. And in many instances it navigates, it's just telling me what to do.
Hmm.
Um, and so, you know, that there seems to be a close correlation for that, uh, for me with all the work that I've done on the heart. Where as the more open that becomes, the clearer that connection, the more stabilized, the stronger, the more present it is. And yeah, and just the more love I feel, you know, just the more of the good, the more bliss, the more feeling great for no reason, you know, which is beautiful relative to the highly conditional way of experiencing life that I had for most of my life, you know, where I needed everything to go my way to feel good.
Hmm. I love because you said feeling great for no reason. I think we feel not great for a reason. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, so one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this stuff is like I think there are most people are conditioned to believe that feeling good is a function of the outside world,
Hmm.
where you get the job you want, you get the partner you want, you get the money, you get the travel, you get whatever, and then you're going to feel good. And so, we just spend our lives just chasing these little blips of feeling good, to then countered by so many instances of not feeling good, when things don't perfectly go our way. And for me, it was really after living that life at a very like high level, um, I just realized it was a very ineffective strategy. There's just no winning. There's no perfectly managing life,
Right.
it just is an impossible task, and it's exhausting, even if you do it well. And so I don't know that I had a choice to come to the consciousness spiritual path. Life kind of made that choice for me, it seems. But I'm really happy I did. I'm really happy I'm working on my life from the inside out versus the other way around.
And if somebody is listening now and thinking, oh, I want the same, I want my heart to be open, I want to live from my heart, but I'm trapped in the mind. It's all these stories and everything's going on there. I can't. What would you say? What would be your advice to somebody like that?
Yeah, I think so. I have things that worked well for me,
Yeah, I'm looking
but
forward to hearing.
and we can talk about those.
Yeah.
But I think the truth is that everyone is going to have their own unique path and set of practices or teachers and teachings that resonate for them. And so I think there's a wisdom in the things that naturally feel good or make you feel alive. And so I would explore, there's many tried and true ways to start to quiet the mind and to start to separate from all that inner chatter. And so I would explore different things, go download, Headspace or Calm or Waking Up app, or like go on YouTube and like just like start trying different practices, whether it's meditation, whether it's breath work, whether it's chanting, whether it's, sound, like any of these things that you can do to just start to pause and slow down. Um, for me, what I found is that, uh, yeah, I had been meditating for 6 years, and I still had an incredibly busy mind. Um, and so, I really wondered, like, I would meditate for 20 minutes and I would feel great. And then I would just get caught up in the busyness of everything. And my mind was just incredibly busy. And what started to really shift things for me was when I met my spiritual teacher, and she just started to really install this idea in my consciousness that my problem in life wasn't like all the things that I thought it was. It was my reactions. And so every single time I was taken out of a calm, peaceful state, it was like I was getting a clue to some pattern or thing underneath in my subconscious that was causing me to react that way. And so, her belief is that, and I believe this too, is that our natural state, our natural being is imperturbable. It's completely at ease and one with life because it is life. And and so to get to the natural state, to rest in that, you have to start to notice what is unlike that. And when you start to, and so for me, that was starting to pay attention to every single time I was triggered by something.
Hmm.
And so I started to keep a note on my phone where every single time I felt myself being triggered, I would write it down.
Ah,
And then I was taught a exercise to start to go into those experiences and start to open to the information in my subconscious to understand what was the pattern that was creating that reaction. And as I would go into those, I would essentially start to, I'd feel a lot of emotions. I'd have somatic experiences. I would see like information. Like, I'm gonna give you an example. Like, one of the ones that I saw today was this, there's this concept of um basically being afraid of being alone. Um, and last night I was at a dinner and I noticed myself just like pulled into this reaction, and it just traced back to this idea that um, if I'm alone, no one likes me, and this kind of program was has been playing on repeat and has was hijacking my experience and or hijacking my awareness. And so, yeah, going into opening to these experiences, uh, I didn't do this in the beginning, but it's what I do now, where I can kind of connect to the heart and true self, and just ask information, like, where did this come from? What is the pattern? And usually I'll actually start to have the true self just take over and solve it. And yeah, and just replace that information with more, with the quality that is of the original essence, which is like, an open-hearted state. um and so, yeah, like for me, it's just been this journey of like continuously noticing what takes me out of a calm, peaceful state. And over time, that noticing has gotten much more refined, where at first it was like, oh, I really got pissed at someone and I really felt it. And then it was like, oh, I noticed myself, I got a little triggered there. And then it was like, oh, I noticed the way that I'm perceiving a situation. Like, I notice the thoughts of judgment towards another person. And then it gets even more refined, where it's like, I notice the thought before it becomes a thought. And all of these things are pointings to, yeah, just the next piece of the next thing that's just obscuring you from resting in that natural state. And so for me, what I love about this practice, what I love about this is that when I realized that my consciousness path or journey was really how I would move into a state of more unconditional well-being and fulfillment, I thought, oh, maybe I need to go and like go hardcore and like move to India or like do something crazy, and because I was just a very intense person who kind of was used to just going all in on stuff when I really was serious about it. And this path was one that allowed me to just integrate it into my everyday experience. And
Mhm.
so, my business became my teacher, my girlfriend became my teacher, my mom became my teacher, like waiting at the bus stop became my teacher, like everything became my teacher, and life itself became the way to see, to continuously wake up to my true essence. And that was really appealing and is still really appealing to me, versus, you know, running off to 10-day retreats every 2 months or whatever it is, like these kind of like hyper, um, the amazing experiences, right? But like it's a very different, like, being on a cycle of peak experiences for spiritual growth is a very different path than seeing everyday life as the path.
Mhm.
And I personally find everyday life as the path to just be an incredibly enriching way to live.
Mm. Yeah, sometimes we need both to know the difference.
Totally. And I think both can still coexist, like I went to a 5 day Qigong retreat a couple months ago with my mom and it was epic,
Wow,
it
your
was
mom.
really, yeah, I'm trying to, bring anybody along for the ride who wants to come. And yeah, I mean, that was amazing. But like, if that was the only thing that I was doing if like that type of experience was like the main thing going on, some these peak experience type things, like my life probably really wouldn't be changing that much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
I hear you.
I feel like my life is changing every day, every week. I'm like, oh my God, it's just a constant experience of greater revelation, which is so freaking cool.
Yeah, I call it the magic of life
Yeah,
unfolding, but you need eyes to see it. That's what we need to do is just to take away the cobwebs that are not allowing us to see that mystery, the magic, the synchronicities, and all the teachings. Yeah, everyone is my teacher. Everything,
yeah,
everything's my teacher. They are
yeah.
teaching me about me. That's the thing.
That's it. That's it. Yeah, it's like consciousness is waking itself up to itself.
Mm.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's the coolest thing.
And do you work with people individually or in groups, or do you offer any kind of
I do. I
services?
do. I coach a handful of people. And my main so I'm a Ren Shui teacher, I'm an Aletheia practitioner. I work with a handful of people, but it's not my main thing. Uh to work with people one on one. I feel called to really try to like bring a lot of these concepts to the mainstream business world.
Ah,
And so um, I just feel like what I see now, and this is one of the really cool parts about awareness, is just like eventually you just start to realize like, well, the meaning of everything that you've been through. You couldn't see it in the moment, but you start to realize that like you had to go through certain things in order to do other things, in order to contribute in a certain way. And so I realized that career and success in business, which I thought was like the thing, was actually just so that I could bring consciousness into business and that people would take me seriously. Because it's hard for a lot of people to um it's much easier rather for someone to say to listen to someone if they've in the business world if they've actually walked the walk in that world. And so for me, I feel yeah, just like I'm uniquely positioned to do that. And I'm creating a new what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to elevate consciousness in the workplace with this new business that's all about bringing entrepreneurs who are on this path together with executives who are on this path to create conscious companies.
oh,
And so
wow.
right now there's this, and there's a recruiting industry that primarily works on, hey, like I need someone with this skill. Like I need a marketing or a sales leader or a product person. And there's this whole dimension of the human that we don't take into consideration really. And that information doesn't exist online. And so this new company, Conscious Talent, is essentially trying to help those people find each other that want to bring consciousness, make it, want it to be an integrated part of their work life experience. Because what I see now I run a community of entrepreneurs into consciousness, and what I see now is a lot of compartmentalization, which is what my experience was very much like, where you have your job and you do your work, and then you do all your practices and you read your books and you do all your spiritual and consciousness stuff, and you don't tell anybody. And that's a very unfulfilling way to live. It's not fully authentic, it's not fully integrated, and for many people it's no longer aligned. And so people, I think we're moving into a phase of experience on the planet where people want to show up for their full selves. They want to bring the whole dimension of their being to whatever they're doing. And in order to do that, you need to be in a container that honors that, inside of a company or with coworkers. And those places exist. It's just there isn't really an easy way for people to find each other on both sides. And so that's what we're hoping to do with this business. And my hope is that as we start to help these companies, I start to help these companies build out their teams and people to find themselves, like showing that running and operating a company this way doesn't mean sacrificing results. In fact, it might even mean better results. And we can start to make consciousness and inner work and transformation a part of what is valued in the professional world versus seen as just like some nice to have that doesn't really mean much. Because I think ultimately, I mean, there's a lot of things that will inspire consciousness on the planet, but one of them is definitely a cultural change. And part of the changing culture is just meeting people where they're at and showing them that they can get better results, through this path.
Mm.
And yeah, I'm excited about it.
Yeah, well, sounds really interesting because it's the new level of creating companies and working together.
I think so too.
It's like upgrade, a huge upgrade.
I think so too. I think so too. I think, our evolution as humans is through consciousness. And as my own experience, as awareness grows and you become more conscious, yeah, just the way you do things evolves. You have greater capacities, greater access to information. You can see things more clearly. The way you relate to people evolves. And all of these things doesn't mean an abandonment of everything before. It's like it's like an expansion of everything where you can go into that old paradigm, but you don't have to stay there. You can zoom out as well and be on these emergent thresholds of doing things and seeing things and being aware of things. And you continuously learn how to integrate the old and the emerging together. And it creates more compelling outcomes.
Mm. What comes to mind is there are so many people that are stuck in the jobs that they don't like, they maybe even hate. It's a waste of time, it's a waste of energy. But if that workplace can be seen as a training ground or as an opportunity for practice and to learn something about yourself, to look at these patterns secretly, because maybe nobody else is doing that, maybe they do. But what if the old people get connected into that and acknowledge that this is happening? Like everyone can grow together and help each other. That would be amazing.
That would be
That,
amazing. It's
yeah,
the
that
dream.
wouldn't be like, I have to work because I have to make money or feed my family or whatever. It would be like, oh, wow, then I'm going to spend 8 hours doing something at the same time as evolving, at the same time as looking at my own patterns and supporting other people in the same. Yeah.
That's it. That's it. And I've also been writing a book about this, called Conscious Accomplishment. And that book is exactly about this, where it's how to bring your desire to grow spiritually and create things in the world together so that they inform each other. I think we have this cultural idea that it has to be one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to be a spiritual person or I'm going to have worldly success and achievement. And, there's just this polarized way of thinking instead of realizing that the path of creation and doing things is the way to see yourself more clearly. And so, if we can just get people excited about this idea and start to present an integrated path in the Western society, which, the householder tradition is not super popularized in the West. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that term.
No.
Well, in I guess like India or places in that part of the world, there was a renunciate who was someone that kind of just gave up everything for spirituality. And then there was a
Uh,
householder.
uh-huh.
And a householder is a person that owned a home, had a job, had a family, but they were still deeply committed to their evolution. And for whatever reason, like at least in the US, most of what you read about with these like spiritual masters and is it's more of the renunciates, right? You think of
Right.
like the people that are just doing this full time instead of having a rich tradition of people that lived a normal life, but yet
Mm-hmm.
were on the path of enlightenment, on the path of being evolved. And yeah, I just think it's time as a society we start to move into that way of being.
Mm. Well, I hope that it's on the way. I know that polarized experience because I lived through it. 1 years ago, I was doing tattoos. I had a studio of tattooing. So in the
Oh, cool.
daytime, I was doing tattoos, and at nighttime, at home, I was guiding people to see through the self illusion. And these two worlds, they were so separate because these people in my chair where I'm tattooing, they had no clue what I'm doing. What's my passion, what I'm good at. Well, I was good at tattoos, but it was such a different experience of having to juggle in between, like to know what to talk to these people, to know what to talk to these people, and kind of I was splitting myself or having two very different masks to wear
Mm,
every day because these worlds they didn't mix. Sometimes my tattoo clients would come in and say, "Oh, what are you doing? I saw some strange post on Facebook. What are you doing?" And I would kind of tell them a little bit what's going on. But now I don't do tattoos anymore, so I can live my truth and share what I want to share and not to have to hide or pretend or diminish what's going
beautiful.
on.
And I think that's what everybody wants. They want to
Mm-hmm.
just move into greater authenticity,
Mm-hmm.
move in and be able to express that. And it's amazing that you do a show like this that can inspire and teach people how to do that.
Mm. And I hope that people that are listening are getting something for themselves. I mean, every conversation has got some kind of seed or already some a bud or something to like, oh, this is interesting. I can go that way and maybe try that, or this makes sense. Sometimes it takes 1,000 times to repeat the message for something to click,
Mm.
you know. So my service is for people who are listening to these conversations and yeah, looking for that seed or for that inspiration or the fire or something that resonates within and keeps opening up or helps to open up or helps to expand, explore, and settle in and integrate wherever everyone is.
Nice.
And do you have any final words or anything that we didn't talk about you think that you want to
I
touch?
think just like I would love for anyone that's listening to who might be who's conscious curious, who's interested in this stuff, but they're like, I'm not ready to like let go of my job or like any of the things that I want or like any of those things. It's like it doesn't have to be either or. You know, you can go on this journey. Everything that you're working towards, everything that you're doing in your life can be an opportunity for you to work on your awareness. And, you know, as you do that, like your life is just going to get better and better. And the things that you want and the things that you understand and all that will change. But it's not something to be scared of. It's something that's actually just moving you to greater authenticity. You know, it's moving you to it's deepening your understanding of yourself and who you really are and what you came here to do. And I think all this stuff that's deeply satisfying. And so, yeah, I would just encourage people to realize, to just recognize that it doesn't have to be one or the other.
Right. Sweet.
Sweet.
Yeah. What comes to mind, let's say you're walking on the beach and you have these boots on, shoes, boots, and you get sand in your shoes. And you notice that it's not comfortable. And at any point, you can sit down and take the shoe off and shake the sand off and continue walking. Nothing changes. But what if we're walking with this sand? Like, no, this sand is who I am. This sand is this uncomfortable feelings or these patterns are what I am. It's me. I cannot let them go. Because what will happen if they let them go? What will happen if I shake that shoe and I cannot complain anymore? I cannot be a victim anymore. I cannot be unhappy anymore. But that sand is so uncomfortable that I don't know what to do, but I'm going to keep it, you know? But what it takes is just taking the shoe off, shaking it, wiping the foot, putting it on. Nothing is lost except for that discomfort, except for that desperation, except for that feeling, oh, life is against me. I'm a victim here. I, I need to be hiding or shrinking just because I have these patterns. And that's painful. But we can learn that, yeah, okay, this sound is not me, it's not mine. I don't need to carry it on. Why not to
That's right.
just shake it, shake it, shake it out, and then carry on. Nothing gets lost.
That's right. Yeah, it's a good metaphor. And yeah, I think it might not seem like it in the moment, but walking around with that sand for the rest of your life is just it's way more uncomfortable than taking the boot off and facing it and you know, getting the sand off your foot.
Mm. Well, thank you so much, Scott. Such a pleasure to communicate with you and share.
Thank you so much. This was a real joy, and I love getting to know you. And it's a great service what you're doing with the show. So thank you.
And could you, for the end, mention your website and your podcast and where people can find you and listen?
Yeah. Yeah. So my website is scottbritton.me. And there you'll find links to my Substack, where I do a lot of writing and share new podcasts. My podcast, Evolution FM, is on YouTube, Spotify. You can also find the link on my main website. And sometimes I go on Twitter. My my handle is last name Britton, Britton. But yeah, I'm around. If you find me, I'm on the internet, and I love talking about the same things that you talk about here. So, um, just trying to spread consciousness.
Mm, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for watching, listening. If you have comments, please just write below or questions or anything. And also please like, subscribe if you haven't. Just share the message with your friends. Thank you so much. Until next time, bye for now.
Bye.